There are battles that are fought with guns and chains, and there are battles that are fought within the heart. The greatest wars of humanity are not those that scar the land, but those that scar the soul. Each of us, no matter where we come from, faces enemies that are unseen, enemies that live not outside of us, but within us. These enemies have no uniform, yet they march beside us every day. They whisper in our ears, they weaken our courage, and they blind us from the truth of who we can become. I have seen the strength of a person tested, not by the weight of their suffering, but by the choices they make when darkness surrounds them. The question is not whether life will challenge us, but whether we will rise to meet it. True victory is not won in the fields of conflict, but in the quiet chambers of the human spirit, where we decide whether to be ruled by fear or guided by hope. There are 5 enemies that every man and woman must face if they are to live free, not just free in body, but free in mind and in heart. These enemies are not nations, they are not people, they are the shadows that follow us in our journey through life. They are the enemies that seek to steal our courage, to cloud our wisdom, to harden our hearts, to divide our purpose, and to silence our dreams. But my friends, I have learned that even the fiercest enemy cannot stand before the will of a soul determined to be free. The human spirit, when awakened by purpose, is stronger than any prison, more powerful than any chain, and more enduring than any force that seeks to destroy it. It is in the struggle against these 5 enemies that we discover who we truly are. So tonight, let us not look to the outside world for answers, but within ourselves. Let us confront the enemies that hold us back, for in defeating them, we not only change our lives, we transform the destiny of humanity itself. Fear is the first enemy that every human being must confront. It is not an enemy we can see, touch, or name easily, but it lives deep within us, shaping our choices, guiding our silence, and sometimes holding us back from the greatness that lies within our reach. Fear is the first prison that locks the human spirit. It chains the heart more tightly than any iron bars, and it silences the voice of hope before it even dares to speak. I have known fear, the fear of pain, the fear of loss, the fear of failure, and even the fear of death. But I have also learned that courage is not the absence of fear, it is the triumph over it. It is the decision to walk forward even when your legs tremble, to speak even when your voice shakes, and to believe even when doubt whispers that you cannot. There were moments when fear seemed larger than life itself. Moments when I stood before choices that would shape not only my fate, but the destiny of many others. I learned that fear feeds on silence. It grows stronger when we run from it, but it weakens when we face it with truth. The man or woman who conquers fear is not the one who feels no fear, but the one who refuses to let it command them. True freedom begins not in the streets or the courts of justice, but in the secret places of the heart, where one decides that no matter what happens, fear will not be the master. In every corner of the world, there are people imprisoned by fear, the fear of being different, the fear of standing up, the fear of losing comfort, the fear of being alone. Yet, history has shown us that every great change began when someone chose to rise above fear. When a voice says, "No more," when a heart declares, "I will not be silent," fear begins to crumble. I have seen the power of ordinary men and women who faced fear and became extraordinary. They were not born heroes. They were simply people who believed that their purpose was greater than their fear. Fear tells us that we are too small, too weak, too powerless to make a difference. It whispers that the world cannot be changed, that we must accept things as they are. But I tell you, fear lies. Every great victory in human history was once thought impossible. Every act of courage was once born in the heart of someone who was afraid, but who refused to let that fear define them. The human spirit has a strength that no fear can destroy, a fire that no darkness can extinguish. When you face fear, do not fight it with anger or denial. Look at it, understand it, and know that it is a part of you. Fear reminds you that you are alive, that you care deeply, that something within you is worth protecting. But do not let it lead you. Let courage lead. Let love lead. Let faith lead. Because courage does not mean you do not feel afraid. It means you feel the fear and take the step anyway. It means trusting that one small act of bravery can inspire countless others to do the same. I have walked through the valley of fear, and I can tell you this: the moment you choose to confront it, you begin to taste freedom. When you stand before what you fear most and say, "I will not bow," the walls around your spirit begin to fall. That is how nations rise. That is how people heal. That is how dreams are born. The world changes not because fear disappears, but because brave hearts decide to move forward despite it. Each of us carries a fire inside, a flame that fear tries to smother. But even a small flame, if protected by courage, can light the way for others. Do not wait for the absence of fear. It will never come. Instead, learn to walk with it, learn to speak over it, and learn to let your faith be louder than your fear. Every step you take toward your purpose weakens fear's hold over you. There will be times when fear wins the day, when you fall, when you doubt, when you hesitate. But do not mistake those moments for defeat. They are simply reminders that courage is not a single act. It is a daily choice. It is waking up each morning and saying, "I will not be ruled by fear today." It is rising each time you fall, stronger and wiser than before. And slowly the prison of fear begins to fade, replaced by the open sky of freedom. Fear may visit you, but it does not have to stay. You have the power to send it away with the strength of your conviction. Stand firm in your truth, even when your knees shake. Speak what is right, even when your voice trembles. Live with purpose, even when the path is uncertain. Because when fear loses its power over you, no force on earth can keep you from becoming who you were meant to be. So, my brothers and sisters, let us remember, Fear is not our master. It is a test. It is the fire through which our courage is forged. And when we emerge from that fire, we find that we are not just survivors, we are free. Hatred is one of the most destructive forces known to the human heart. It creeps in quietly, often disguised as justice, pride, or pain. And before we know it, it consumes everything in its path. Hatred blinds us, hardens us, and steals from us the ability to see the humanity in one another. It poisons both the oppressor and the oppressed. For when hatred grows in the heart of one, it soon finds its reflection in the heart of another. I have seen men destroyed, not by the chains that bound their bodies, but by the bitterness that chained their souls. And I have learned that hatred, no matter how justified it may feel, is a fire that burns the one who holds it. When I walked the path of struggle, when my country was torn apart by injustice and cruelty, I too felt the weight of anger. I too knew the desire for vengeance. It would have been easy to allow that anger to take root, to let it define my mission, to let it guide my words and my actions. But I understood that if I allowed hatred to shape my heart, then I would become no different from those who sought to destroy me. Hatred is not power. It is surrender, a surrender of peace, of compassion, and of one's true purpose. The man who hates is still a prisoner, even if the walls around him have fallen. Forgiveness is not a gift we give to those who have wronged us. It is a gift we give to ourselves. We forgive not because they deserve it, but because we deserve peace. To forgive does not mean to forget the injustice or deny the pain. It means refusing to let that pain rule over your future. It means saying, "You may have taken my freedom, but you will not take my heart." Forgiveness liberates the soul. It lifts the burden that hatred builds and allows the spirit to breathe again. I have seen how forgiveness can heal nations, how it can transform enemies into partners, and how it can turn suffering into strength. Many believe that love and forgiveness are signs of weakness, but I tell you, they are the highest form of strength. It takes far more courage to forgive than to retaliate. Anyone can hate. It takes no wisdom, no discipline, no vision. But to love in the face of hatred, to show kindness when you have been shown cruelty, that is the act of a truly free soul. Love is not naive. It does not close its eyes to injustice. Love confronts evil, but it does so without losing its humanity. It fights not to destroy, but to restore. It stands firm in truth, yet it refuses to surrender to bitterness. When hatred controls a people, generations suffer. It passes from parent to child, poisoning every heart it touches. It builds walls where there should be bridges. It divides communities, families, and nations. But when love steps forward, when forgiveness is chosen, those walls begin to fall. The wounds of history begin to heal. I have seen faces once filled with anger soften into smiles when understanding replaced resentment. I have seen former enemies embrace not because they forgot the past, but because they refused to be its prisoners any longer. You see, Hatred cannot drive out hatred. Only love can do that. Hatred multiplies darkness. Love multiplies light. The world does not change when we hate those who hate us. It changes when we refuse to become like them. The greatest revolutions are not fought with weapons, but with hearts strong enough to forgive. The greatest victories are not won on battlefields, but in the quiet moments when a person decides, I will not let hatred live in me any longer. That is where peace begins, not in governments, not in treaties, but in the human heart. I have seen men who were once enemies work side by side to build a new nation. I have seen women who lost everything find the strength to forgive those who took it from them. Their hearts became the soil from which hope could grow again. That is the power of love. It does not erase the past, but it redeems it. It takes what was broken and gives it meaning. It turns pain into wisdom and loss into purpose. We must remember that hatred is easy. It is the language of fear, the companion of ignorance, and the refuge of the weak. Love is difficult. It demands patience, humility, and sacrifice. But it is love, not hate, that has the power to rebuild what was destroyed. When we choose love, we choose to rise above the past rather than be buried beneath it. When we forgive, we open the door for others to change as well. My friends, the world needs less anger and more understanding. It needs less vengeance and more mercy. We cannot build a future on resentment. We can only build it on reconciliation. Each of us has the power to break the cycle of hatred in our homes, in our communities, in our hearts. Every time you choose kindness instead of cruelty, forgiveness instead of revenge, you strike a blow against hatred itself. Let us be the generation that refuses to hate. Let us be the people who light candles in the dark instead of cursing the darkness. Let us remember that even the smallest act of compassion can echo across time and transform countless lives. For love, when it is chosen in the face of hate, is the most powerful force in the world. It does not shout, it does not demand. It simply stands strong, unyielding, and eternal. And when love stands, hatred must fall. Ignorance is one of the most dangerous enemies of humanity. It is silent, invisible, and yet it shapes the destiny of nations. It is not only the absence of knowledge, but the refusal to seek it. It is the blindness that prevents us from seeing truth, justice, and compassion. Ignorance builds walls where there should be windows, and it closes doors that lead to freedom. A mind that is kept in darkness cannot dream, cannot grow, and cannot lead others into light. I have seen the pain that ignorance can cause, not only in those who suffer from it, but in those who use it as a weapon to keep others small. For ignorance is not only personal, it is political. It is the tool of those who fear an awakened mind. When I was young, I understood that knowledge is power. It is the one thing that no one can take away from you. A person who learns begins to see the world as it truly is: complex, beautiful, unfair, and full of possibility. Education gives us the eyes to see beyond the surface, to question what we are told, and to imagine what could be. That is why I have often said that education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. It is the light that dispels darkness, the key that opens the gates of opportunity, and the shield that protects us from manipulation. I have seen entire generations kept in ignorance so that they could be controlled. I have seen governments fear books more than bullets because a book can awaken a mind in ways a gun never can. An educated child is a threat to tyranny because that child will grow to question injustice. That is why every effort must be made to bring education to every corner of society, to every village, every community, every home. The fight against ignorance is the foundation of every struggle for freedom. Without knowledge, there can be no true liberation, only the illusion of it. Ignorance does not always come from a lack of schooling. Sometimes it comes from a closed heart. There are people who have read many books but have learned very little about kindness. There are those who know facts but lack wisdom, who understand logic but have forgotten compassion. True education is not about filling the mind with information, but about shaping the soul with understanding. It teaches us not only to think, but to think deeply. It teaches us to listen, to respect, and to see the humanity in others. A nation that values knowledge is a nation that cannot be enslaved. When the people think for themselves, when they question, when they discuss, when they innovate, no ruler, no oppressor, no system can hold them down. The chains of ignorance are heavier than the chains of iron, but they can be broken by the light of learning. Every child who picks up a book is lifting a weapon against poverty, against hatred, against hopelessness. Every teacher who shares wisdom is building an army of dreamers who will one day change the world. Ignorance feeds fear, and fear feeds division. When we do not understand one another, we begin to fear one another. When we fear, we start to hate. That is how nations fall apart, not because of differences, but because of the ignorance that refuses to bridge them. Education teaches us that our strength lies in diversity, that our differences are not threats, but treasures. When we learn about others, when we open our minds to new ideas, we find that humanity shares the same hopes, the same pains, and the same desire for dignity. The fight against ignorance begins with a single question, the courage to ask why. Why do things happen as they do? Why are people treated unequally? Why can't life be better for everyone? When a child begins to ask these questions, the world begins to change. That is why those in power often fear educated people. They know that once people begin to think for themselves, they can no longer be deceived. They can no longer be divided. They can no longer be controlled. Knowledge frees the mind, and a free mind is the greatest threat to oppression. But the war against ignorance is not fought only in classrooms. It is fought in our daily lives, in how we speak, how we listen, and how we treat one another. Every time we choose to learn instead of judge, to ask instead of assume, to understand instead of condemn, we strike a blow against ignorance. The world needs not only educated minds, but enlightened hearts. We must learn to seek wisdom, not just from books, but from experience, from elders, from each other. Ignorance will always exist where people stop questioning. That is why learning must never end. No matter how much we know, there is always more to understand. Knowledge is not a destination. It is a lifelong journey. We must nurture it, protect it, and share it. Let us build societies that honor teachers, that celebrate curiosity, that invest in learning as the greatest treasure. Because when knowledge flows freely, the light of truth reaches even the darkest places. I have seen what happens when people rise above ignorance. I have seen them break free from lies, unite across divides, and rebuild nations from ashes. And I have also seen what happens when ignorance rules, when people are turned against one another, when they accept injustice because they do not understand its roots, when they live in the shadows of fear. The difference between darkness and dawn is education. So I say to every young person, never stop learning. Read, ask, listen, grow. The world belongs to those who seek to understand it. Do not let ignorance steal your future. Fill your mind with truth. Fill your heart with compassion, and let your wisdom become the light that guides others. For when knowledge and kindness walk hand in hand, ignorance has no place left to hide. Doubt is perhaps the most deceptive of all enemies. It does not come with force or fury, but in silence. It enters the mind like a whisper, soft and convincing, until it becomes a voice that echoes louder than hope itself. It tells us we are too small, too weak, too ordinary to make a difference. It convinces us that our dreams are foolish, our efforts meaningless, and our purpose unreachable. It makes us question our worth, our path, and even our destiny. And if we are not careful, doubt can imprison us more completely than any cell, more cruelly than any chain. I have known doubt. I have felt its weight in moments when the world seemed too vast and my voice too small. There were times when I questioned whether justice could ever win over cruelty, whether unity could ever defeat division, whether peace could ever rise from pain. There were moments when I wondered if the struggle was worth the sacrifice, if freedom was truly possible for a people who had known only oppression. But it was in those moments that I learned one of life's greatest truths, that courage is not born in the absence of doubt, but in the decision to move forward despite it. Doubt feeds on uncertainty. It thrives when we focus on what we lack instead of what we have. It grows when we compare ourselves to others, when we forget that every great achievement began with one small step, one uncertain heart, and one unwavering dream. Every person who ever changed the course of history once doubted themselves. Every leader, every inventor, every dreamer faced that same inner voice saying, "You cannot do this." But what separates those who succeed from those who surrender is the ability to listen to a greater voice, the voice of belief, the voice of purpose, the voice of faith that whispers, yes, you can. When I was imprisoned, doubt was a constant companion. It tried to convince me that our cause was lost, that the years were wasted, that freedom was an illusion. But I refused to let it rule me. I reminded myself that doubt may speak loudly, but it is not the truth. The truth is found in persistence. The truth is that even in darkness, hope can be born. It always seems impossible until it is done. Those words are not merely a saying. They are a reminder that impossibility is a wall built by doubt, and every wall can be broken if we refuse to stop pushing. The world has a way of magnifying our insecurities. It tells us that we must be perfect before we begin, that we must be powerful before we speak, that we must be certain before we act. But I tell you this, you do not need to be perfect to begin. You only need to be willing. Greatness is not born in comfort. It is born in uncertainty. The person who waits for perfect conditions will never move, and the one who listens too long to doubt will never rise. We grow not by avoiding failure, but by walking through it. Every step you take in faith weakens the grip of doubt. Do not be ashamed of your doubts. They are part of being human. Even the strongest hearts question themselves at times. But do not build your home in doubt. Visit it, learn from it, and then move forward. Doubt can be a teacher. If you let it be, it teaches humility, patience, and the value of perseverance. But never let it be your master. Never let it write the story of your life. Each time you silence doubt, you build strength. Each time you act despite fear, you grow in courage. And soon you realize that the power to overcome has always been within you. The person you are becoming is stronger than the person you were. You begin to understand that destiny does not belong to those who never doubt. It belongs to those who doubt and still believe. When you begin to lose faith, remember the journey you have already walked. Remember the mountains you have already climbed, the nights you have already survived, the moments you thought you couldn't go on, and yet you did. Those are the proofs that you are capable. Those are the victories that doubt cannot erase. Hold on to them, because they are reminders that strength is built one challenge at a time. There will always be those who doubt you. There will always be those who say your dream is too big, your goal too distant, your vision too unrealistic. Let them talk. Their words cannot define your destiny. Only your faith